Mayor. We are also blessed to have a young man, as was mentioned, and he is the St. Francis valedictorian. In fact, he is the first African-American St. Francis valedictorian. He is going to come to you now with a presentation called Dreaming Big Dreams, Mr. Keon Pearson.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Watley. Thank you, Mayor Mike Bell, for your inspiring words. Thank you, Marcy Captor, very much for your inspiring words as well. I'm honored to have been invited here to speak today. I'm here to deliver a message about unity. Before I get to the meat of this address, I'll give a little information about myself. I was born and raised here in Toledo, and I've lived here all my life. Up until the time that I was 5 years old, my mom, my brother, and I lived in the Brand Whitlock projects. We moved to the Old West End when I was about 6 years old. The great thing about that house was that it was right next door to my great-grandmother, Dear. Whenever we had difficulties at home, Dear was always there to have my back, my mom's back, my brother's back. Keep that in mind, because that is the kind of support system that I'm going to talk about later in my speech. There's also a man in my neighborhood whom I called Mr. Mike. He really exposed me to a world outside of my own mental framework. He took me to Indian and ethnic restaurants. He always invited me with him when he had speakers come to Toledo. And he was always, always sharing with me ideas that he had learned in his reading. My mom, of course, was a little leery about this grown man who had taken an interest in a fifth-grade boy, but she got to know him, and she got to realize how good of a guy he actually is. Keep that in mind as well, because he is exactly the kind of mentor I'll talk about later. Growing up, my life has been pretty good. My mom worked a lot to keep us in comfort, but it wasn't all peaches and cream. My mom was a young, single black mother. We all know the struggles that single mothers have to endure. Fortunately, I thank God for the fact that we had my grandmother and others to help us through. Because of their help, I never really felt limited by my circumstances. Also, because of that help, I've been able to do a lot of great things with my life. At St. Francis, I've become a National Merit and National Achievement Scholar, and I'm the first African-American valedictorian in the 55-year history of St. Francis Desales. Over this last Christmas break, I received a letter from my first choice college, and I believe the first college in the country, that is Harvard University. Yes. I received the news that I was an outstanding applicant, and they wanted to know me in advance of the normal admissions date that I had been accepted into the class of 2015. Yes. Now, I didn't come here to brag about myself. I'm only telling you about my successes because I want to show the adults who are present that all hope is not lost in minority youth. Yes. I want to show the youth who are present that although we all face struggles, we are all undoubtedly capable of success. Yes. You don't have to choose the path that your parents or your peers chose. You have within you the potential to create the future that you will love. Now, what does this have to do with unity? As Mayor Bell said, before we can have a semblance of unity in this country, before we can have only positive, uplifting feelings exchanged between all people, before the fate of one is the fate of all, we must have equality. Not just legal equality. In theory, we already have that. Dr. King stated, "I want to be the white man's brother, not his brother-in-law." Yes. What Dr. King wanted was full equality: legal, racial, economic, educational, and social. Why? Because Dr. King realized that we have to be equal partners in order to be united. The patron-client relationship does not bring about unity. We must develop a partner-co-partner relationship, mutually beneficial to everyone involved. In order to be equal partners, we have to be able to contribute equally to the relationship. We can only contribute equally to this relationship when we are equals in wealth, education, disposition, communication style, and value systems. Now, I'm not saying that we need to be uniform in order to be unified. Ohio is by no means the same as Hawaii, but they both exist as the United States. So too can unique individuals live in unity. As Dr. King said, we may have all come on different ships, but we're in the same boat now. Yes. Once we have achieved equality, unity will inevitably follow. Poverty, then, is hindering us from attaining unity. That makes sense. There's nothing uniting a Wall Street banker to a struggling single mother in Harlem. How is the fate of the banker at all tied to the well-being of the struggling mother? It isn't. But poverty is not just economic. There's educational poverty, poverty of emotional stability, poverty of skills like reading and comprehending, poverty of support systems, poverty of family, poverty of communication skills, poverty of ambition, and poverty of role models. The impoverished generally suffer from most or all of these forms, while the middle class and wealthy generally suffer from few of these forms. Poverty is not insurmountable, though. Every single person in this room can help alleviate poverty. The reason I'm here today is that I have an idea that I think will lead to less poverty, greater equality, and ultimately, perfect unity. My goal today is twofold. I have a message to deliver to the adults and a message for the youth. To the adults, I exhort you to reach out personally to the youth. I'm not talking about just donating to a charity or your church. That's fine. But I'm recommending personal, one-on-one, consistent mentorship. As Dr. King said, philanthropy is commendable, but it must not cause the philanthropist to overlook the circumstances of economic injustice that cause philanthropy to be necessary. As I said before, poverty is not just a lack of money. It can manifest itself as a lack of education, family or social support, access to transportation, knowledge of how the professional world speaks or behaves, or just a simple lack of an appropriate role model. You don't necessarily have to spend any of your money to help the youth out of poverty. Just be an example of success. Maybe you can invite a mentee to your home for a get-together in which only professional language is acceptable. How else are we supposed to learn those rules of professionalism? Without mentors like my grandma, Mr. Mike, and others like Paris Coleman and Fletcher Word, I wouldn't be standing here today speaking. I wouldn't be going to Harvard. My ideas about the future would be completely different. That is the importance of being a mentor. Buying a gift occasionally is nice, and is certainly appreciated, but it does nothing to solve our real problems. And trust me, these are our problems. When anyone is impoverished, everyone suffers. Violent crime, we all know, is much higher in areas of poverty. Everyone pays taxes to support the jails that house criminals. Please don't think that you can insulate yourself from the problems of the hood by moving to Perrysburg or Sylvania. You can't do it. Now for the youth. Dream big dreams. We need you to be successful. I beg you to exit from the current culture of ignorance that plagues the minority groups. You do not have to live a life of poverty. There are greener, more comfortable pastures everywhere. Just like everyone else on this planet, I've gone through a tremendous load of hardships. But I can still look at my life as great, and I eagerly await a successful future. You can do the same. Honestly, it will take some effort. It will take some effort. You will have to work a lot harder than others. You probably have to sacrifice some of your social life in order to gain productivity. You have to break off a few negative relationships and forge positive ones. Because you cannot succeed in this world without help. Please humble yourself to ask for assistance from those who can help you. If you get your name out there, let people know your talents, and network with those who are willing to help, your success is inevitable. Perhaps most importantly, improve your ability to speak in professional settings. Slang is easy, but proper speech is essential to advancing yourself. I hope that you take some of my suggestions to heart. I believe that if adults are more willing to help and the youth are more willing to dream big, we can effect a major leap towards unity. It may not be easy, but as Dr. King stated, human progress is neither automatic nor inevitable. Every step towards the goal requires sacrifice, suffering, and struggle, the tireless exertions and passionate concern of dedicated individuals. Thank you.
Nursing.
Psychology.
Social work. Art